Hello, and thank you for joining us today. We are very excited to have you here. I see that we still have folks logging on, so I'm going to give us a little bit more time before we get started. But don't go anywhere, sit tight. Our presentation will begin shortly. Hello, and thank you for joining us today for this informational webinar about your upcoming tour with EF Go Ahead Tours, the Grand Tour of Italy. My name is Nilsson. I work for Go Ahead Tours as a member of our community and engagement team, and I'm very excited to be here with you today and to be your host for this webinar. I'm also thrilled to be able to introduce you to my colleague, Katya. Katya, can I ask you to introduce yourself to our travelers, please?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Katya. I'm a tour director. I am Italian. I live in Rome, and I've been working for the company since '99, so still leading tours since last century.
Well, Katya, I'm so excited to have you here. Katya and I, we've done a number of these webinars together, so I know that she is going to be a great resource for us today. But I want to jump right in and begin the presentation. And first things first, let's talk about our agenda and what we have in store for you. So what we're going to do is we're going to kick things off by talking about entry requirements. So I'll talk to you about what you need in order to enter Italy. I'll also talk to you briefly about COVID as it relates to our EF COVID Care Promise. From there, we'll be talking about some other tips to help you prepare for tour. I'll be bringing Katya into our conversation there to talk a little bit about things like weather, packing, money, and then from there, we will talk a little bit about air travel, getting to and from tour. After that is my favorite part of the presentation, where I'm going to ask Katya to give us a short overview of the tour, give us a little taste of what we can expect when we are traveling through Italy. Also, I'm going to ask her to describe the excursions that we have available. These are tours that you can add to enhance your experience on tour with us. And so I will have her go through each of those to give you a little bit of insight about what is included there if you do decide to join one of those. Then at the end of our session, we will have a live question and answer period. Now, during this webinar, we can't see or hear you at home, but we do want to hear from you, and we do encourage you to answer or ask your questions. We have on the toolbar in Zoom, you'll see a little option there labeled Q&A, and when you click on that, you'll be able to type your questions into us. I have 3 colleagues that are going to be monitoring that inbox, and they'll probably be responding to in writing. But if you don't get a response right away, chances are we're just holding on to that to answer during our Q&A period. Lastly, I do want to mention to you that we are recording today's session. So if you want to go back and watch this later, you'll have that opportunity. And if you have folks that are traveling with you that weren't able to log on at this time, they will also be able to see this presentation. So let's jump right in and begin by talking about entry requirements. So I have some good news, which is as of right now, there are no COVID-related entry requirements in order to enter Italy. So right now, the only thing that you would need in order to enter Italy is a valid passport. So please, before you get much closer to tour, I would say make sure you know where your passport is, check that it's not expired. Another thing to bear in mind is that your passport should have extra validity on it. You want to make sure that your passport is going to be valid for at least 6 months beyond the date that you're scheduled to return home. So again, make sure your passport is valid and will be valid for at least 6 months beyond the date that you're scheduled to return home. Now, I want to talk briefly about COVID as it relates to our EF COVID Care Promise. The EF COVID Care Promise is a policy that we created to support our travelers and answer this question: what happens if I am required to quarantine on tour? Well, the EF COVID Care Promise is a promise to you that if that were to happen, we would we would arrange and pay for your hotel as well as all of your meals. We'll also make sure that you have translation services and assistance in communicating with medical professionals if necessary. And if you have purchased your flight itinerary with us, we will arrange a new itinerary to get you home once your quarantine has ended at no additional expense to you. So we sincerely hope that this is something that doesn't come into play at all during your tour, but I want you to know that we'll be there for you if necessary. Now, let's talk about some helpful tips we have for you as you get closer to tour. We are here today to help answer a lot of the questions that you might have as your tour gets closer. But if questions come up between now and then, one place that you can go to is our website, where we have what is called the Go Ahead Help Center. So this is at goaheadtours.com/help. And we have hundreds of articles here about every aspect of our tours. So if you have a question that you're not sure of, you can search by typing into that search bar there. And we have a chat function on that site as well. So if you're not finding what you're looking for, you can get in touch with us through that site as well. Now, another digital resource that I think is essential that you should download before you go on tour is the EF Go Ahead Tours app. The app is very, very helpful for a number of reasons, and I think that everybody should have it before they go on tour. If you haven't downloaded it yet and you have your smartphone handy, if you open up the camera on your smartphone and point it at this QR code, it will prompt you to download the Go Ahead app. You can also search for this by name in the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. I'm going to go to the next slide, but this QR code is going to still be on the screen if you are opening up your smartphone. So the reason it's so important to have the app is, first, as you're preparing for tour, we have a lot of resources to assist you in that. So we have a whole section called Getting Ready that has tons of information about getting ready for tour, from weather, electricity, money, and more. You also will have your flight and hotel information uploaded in the app once you get close enough to tour, and you can view that information even when you're on airplane mode. Now, the more important reason to have the app is that we have now made it so that you can communicate with the other members of your group. So if you log on there, you'll be able to see how many people you're traveling with. You can share messages. You can create little chats to meet up for dinner and things like that. But the most important reason in my mind is that your tour director also has the ability to use this app. And most of them now are doing so during the tour and will share information with the group in the app. So one example, I was on tour in January, and our tour director was sending updates about things like, oh, bear in mind, tomorrow we have to dress a certain way for this site, and then sharing some details about the itinerary. So for that purpose, I would say please download the app. It'll make it so that you have the most information possible during the course of the tour. Katya, now for this section, we're going to get into weather and packing. I know that weather has been very hot in Italy this summer, but the folks that we have here, they're traveling in September and October. Can you tell me a little bit about what folks might expect weather-wise during September and October when they're coming to Italy?
Well, it's going to be just as hot, I would say, because now it's unbearably hot. And in fact, it's hard to walk in the sun, and so that's September and October are still hot, especially September. October, the second half might be better, and it starts to be changeable also. Maybe it cools down a lot at night, but during the day it's still hot. So light clothes, hats, comfortable sandals, for the daily activities, and then of course a light jacket for the evening, because as I said, it might cool down, but it's still hot. Yeah, pleasantly hot, I would say. Yeah.
So yeah, let's talk a little bit about packing. So I always encourage people to pack as light as possible. I know that sometimes folks are wondering, oh, how much baggage should I bring? What kind of luggage should I use? For me, what I do when I go on tour is I bring one large checked suitcase and a backpack as my carry-on. So then when I carry my backpack on the airplane, and I have all of my essentials in there. So things like your medication, spare clothes, toothbrush, your phone charger, you want to make sure that you're putting those in your carry-on bag. But like I said, I bring one big check bag and one carry-on that's a backpack. So that way I always have one hand free. So that's what I would say is to me, that's kind of packing light, is one big check suitcase and a backpack as my carry-on. But with the temperatures you're going to be having, I would say bring lightweight clothing, and think about if you do get cooler weather at night, things that you could layer one with the other. So lightweight clothing you can layer. And Katya, as far as walking shoes, now comfort is key here. So you really want to have good, comfortable walking shoes, right?
Yeah, whatever walking shoes you use when walking, I mean, that you find the most comfortable, that's the one you need to bring. I have people who said, well, I bought this particular shoes for this tour, and then they realized they were not comfortable at all. So what you already know is comfortable, that you can wear multiple times, because if you're used to sneakers, that's probably comfortable for you. But if you're used to sandals, you don't want to wear sneakers just because you've been told. Something that you know you can wear every day without having issues with your ankles or a back and so on. But that is, of course, personal. It depends on what you're used to. But the main thing is comfort.
Yes. And speaking of comfort, I would say that in September and like Katya said, into October, sun protection. Think about things like hats, sunglasses, sun cream, these kind of things, you will want them. I also know some folks that even travel with like those little portable fans. If that's going to make you feel comfortable and happy, bring one of those too. Now
they also have some very nice colorful towels that you can put on your neck, that they can also help to keep cooler especially during the day when in the sun.
Yes, definitely. I think it's less likely that you would need a raincoat, but you want to be prepared. I would say a raincoat is better than an umbrella, in my opinion, but because then if you have it, it can pack up really small, and you can also use it at night if you do get a cooler evening. Reusable water bottle, you can just fill up your water bottles throughout the tour, stay hydrated. Of course, bottled water is also going to be available, but you can save money, you can save plastic if you bring a reusable water bottle. Also, a universal electrical adapter. I have a whole slide about electrical adapters, so we will get into that in a minute. But before I move on, Katya, there's one question that I wanted to ask you about, which is on this tour, are there any days that we're going to have to wear a specific dress code? I'm thinking about things like going to the Vatican. Are there specific ways we need to dress for days like that?
Every church requests a dress code. It's very simple though. Now, we don't need to cover all of the legs. We don't need to put something long or on our head. As long as we have shirts that cover our shoulders and shorts that are knee length, they're fine. And no requirements for the shoes. So sandals, again, would be fine. But anything which comes by the knees and comes around the shoulders, not long sleeves, but something that comes around the shoulder is going to be fine. But that's the only time where we have a dress code requirement, so which is for the churches. St. Mark's, since we're visiting multiple churches, Assisi, for example, the Basilica of St. Francis, the Vatican, the St. Mark's Basilica, these are some of the highlights. And of course, there is a dress code required for that.
Great. Katya, my next question is about laundry. I actually saw we just had someone submit a question about this, but if someone wanted to do laundry during the course of this tour, what options would they have?
There might be laundromat at the larger cities, and there is laundry service at the hotels. Though laundry service at the hotels is expensive because they charge by piece. Laundromats are accessible most times, but obviously it takes part of your time from your daily activities. So it's if you can, eventually, if you're more flexible, you can be prepared to wash lighter clothes in your room and have them dry by the time you come back at the end of the day. But it will be possible, but again, it takes time from your activities. Considering that it's a tour which has a very intense program, a lot of beautiful things included, and you don't want to miss any of them, I would skip the laundry for the sites instead. Okay.
Yeah, and I would say that on every tour I've been on, I've gotten a little bit creative about reusing certain things, like, you know, maybe bringing 1 or 2 pairs of trousers and using those over again. So I think that that's a good way to think about it, is trying to cut down on the need to do laundry if at all possible.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk a little bit more about electricity. I mentioned a universal adapter on the packing slide. So I recommend a universal adapter just because once you have one, you'll be prepared to travel just about anywhere in the world. But in Italy, they use what we call the Type-C outlet, which has these 2 round pins. So if you're traveling from North America, you will need to get an adapter just to be able to plug into the wall. Now, another thing that I want to mention is that the voltage of the electricity in Italy is stronger than what we have here in North America. So their electricity ranges from 220 to 240 volts. And here in North America, we're around 100 to 120. So for most kind of devices, this is fine. For example, if you look at the charging block for an iPhone, it will say input 100 to 240. So you can use that in North America, you can use that in Europe. It's fine over that whole range of voltage. So I would just say check the devices you plan to bring to make sure that they're able to operate up to 240 volts. And many devices are designed this way, like laptops, cameras, cell phones. They're designed to work in both places. The types of devices that I recommend that that you use extreme caution with are hair care devices. One thing that I should mention to you, and I just saw Margie actually submitted a question about this, is do the hotels have hair dryers? So yes, the hotels do have hair dryers. I would expect to have hair dryers in the hotels. The other kinds of hair care devices like flattening irons or curling irons, those are ones that have gotten people into trouble because oftentimes they're only designed to work up to 100 or 110 volts. And then if you plug it into a 240 volt outlet, it will overpower the device, sometimes ruining it. So I would say be very cautious with those. If you have a device that's only designed to work up to 110 volts, I would say probably best to leave that at home. I know that if you want to buy something specifically for this trip, you can buy devices that will work with this voltage. So just be careful, read your device's labels, and see what is available there. All right, so let's talk a little bit about money and handling money on tour. So in Italy, they use the euro. So that is the currency that you will be using. But the good news is that credit cards are also widely accepted. So Visa and MasterCard especially are very widely accepted. So you can use your credit cards there if you wish. American Express and Discover, not so much. I would say do not rely on an American Express card as your only card that you're bringing to Italy. It's less likely that you would find places that would take that. But I would say Visa and MasterCard are your best bet. Also, you should bring debit cards so that then you can withdraw cash from ATMs. Katia, do I have it right that it's probably easier to simply withdraw cash using a card from an ATM than to bring cash from home and try and exchange it on tour?
Exactly. That's the easiest way. Again, ATMs are available at every possible corner. They are always working, so 24/7, and they give you the best possible exchange rate because it's depending on your home bank. It doesn't depend on the places where you're going to exchange. Where again, you might get better prices because exchanging cash is becoming more and more difficult. And every time there is extra costs involved that make the operation too expensive for you. So better to not rely on cash, but cards. Make sure you warn, of course, your bank that you're traveling over here so that they will make the card work without adding any surprises and issues. You need a PIN code that will make the cards operate at any ATM.
Great. Wonderful. So I also want to mention tipping here. So this is another thing that you should be planning to budget for. So when you travel with Go Ahead, you're going to have some folks that are working very hard to make sure that you have a great time on tour. So you have local guides, you have bus drivers, and you have a tour director that's going to be with you every day, and will even start working on this tour before you arrive. So as far as tipping, we do provide guideline amounts that we recommend. And these tips for the tour director, we recommend that you tip your tour director the equivalent of $8 to $10 per person per day of the tour. For bus drivers, we recommend the equivalent of $3 per person per day of the tour. And for local guides, we recommend the equivalent of $2 per person per day. Now, I should mention that I get a lot of questions. People ask, is it okay to tip in US dollars? And I would say, first things first, any tip is appreciated. If that's what you have, that's what you have. If possible, of course, it's preferable to get it in euros because then they don't have to change it. And I would say, especially for bus drivers and local guides, if you're doing these smaller amount tips like $3 or $2, it's probably better to be doing that in euros because it's not as, you don't want to have to go into a bank and try and do an exchange for $3 is what
exactly. That's the main and only reason. Nobody would say, oh no, I'm not getting any other currencies but euros. It's just to show your appreciation in a way that will not make make it complicated for them to change it into real money. Okay.
Katya, can I ask you a question about the bus drivers on this tour? I mean, it's not common that we would have one bus driver for the whole trip, right? Would we have different bus drivers in different cities?
With this specific tour, actually, we tend to have the same driver for most of the tour. Yes, we have a bus package that starts from the day we are in Como. Actually, some of the people might meet the driver at the airport. So for one of the arrival transfers and all the way to Rome. So this is one of the cases where you can, but the tour director will tell you in case there is a bus driver change because they need to respect a certain number of days and working hours, working days and days off. But if it's the case and you need to say goodbye, the tour director will remind you, will tell you when it's time to thank the driver. But for most of the grand tours, it's going to be the same driver from beginning till the end, except for the extension. The extension in Rome, there is a change for sure.
Gotcha. Okay, wonderful. Well, I do want to keep us moving forward in our presentation. And the next section that I have is a little bit about air travel. So we have a few quick tips for you here. One thing that I always think is important to mention is about seating. We get so many questions about seating on the airplane, and seating is ultimately up to the discretion of your airline. So we can take requests from you and we can submit those to your airline, but they can change those. And so typically it's best to make your seating request directly with the airline that you're flying on. One of the things that I always recommend is to download the app for your airline. Oftentimes in that app, they'll allow you to select your seats. You can also do other pre-trip management. So you can do things like adding your known traveler number or dietary preferences. So good idea to have the app. And also if you have a delay, then they'll notify you right away. I'm also advising people to arrive extra early to the airport. In the past, we always used to say 2 hours for an international flight, but things are just a little bit unsettled in the air travel space still. So I would say give yourself extra time. You'll be grateful to be relaxed and not having to worry about the length of lines or anything like that. And lastly, I want to remind you again, when you're packing the bag that you carry with you on the airplane, make sure you have essential items in that bag. So medication, especially toiletries, a few spare outfits, things to charge devices like cell phones or hearing aids. If you have a charger for your hearing aids, make sure that that is in your carry-on bag.
And I would say a couple of changes, just because you never know, you might get there might be delays, let's say, with the luggage.
Yes.
And so at least you have something with you for the first day, right?
Yes, yeah, some spare outfits. I mean, something so that if you want to be able to change it to some clean clothes after your flight.
Exactly.
Now, let's talk about what happens if you are delayed coming to tour. And the same actually goes for going home as well, but I think you'll primarily be concerned with getting to tour. So there are a few different kinds of delays that you could experience. The first one is not so serious, and this is just you have a little bit of a delay getting into Milan. You're pushed back by half an hour or an hour. Not a huge deal. The bigger problems come if you have a flight cancellation. So if your airline cancels your flight, or if they delay your flight and that causes you to miss a connection. So if you have a delay that causes you to miss a connecting flight or a cancellation. Now, in these circumstances, the best thing for you to do is to work directly with the representatives for your airline, because in those situations, they are responsible for providing you with a new itinerary. We call this reprotecting you. So they're responsible for reprotecting you. So again, the fastest way to get to tour is to work directly with the agents for your airline. Now, if you need support or you have new flight information to share with us, you can always contact our on-tour support team. Their phone number is here on the screen, and it's also available in the Go Ahead app. Now, if we do have a situation where you have to have a new flight itinerary, please know that your flighting routing will probably change and your seating assignments will likely change. But still very important to hop on those options, because everyone else that was delayed will be trying to do the exact same thing. Now, this is one opportunity for us to talk a little bit about travel insurance. I think travel insurance is really important, and not just for all of the things that can happen on the ground, like having medical coverage, and things of that nature, but also things that can happen to you in transit. So we have a package that we call Trip Protection, and if you have a really long flight delay, you can get reimbursed for booking hotel rooms. So those are some of the things that we recommend considering when you're shopping for travel insurance. The last thing I want to say here is to pack your patience. These situations are not fun. They are difficult and you will be tired, but the best thing I can say about it is it's temporary. You will get through it. And once we have you on the ground, we're going to do our best to make sure that we're showing you a wonderful time on tour. So again, pack your patience, and we will show you a great time once you arrive on tour and meet the group. So let's talk a little bit about your arrival day. I want to mention that for those of you that have purchased your flight package with Go Ahead, and you are scheduled to arrive on the standard arrival day for the tour, we already have a plan for you to be met at the airport by a representative who will then arrange your transportation to your hotel. Now, if you have purchased your own flights, if you've arranged your own flights, but you're arriving on that standard arrival day, we can also arrange for you to be met at the airport and delivered to the hotel. Now, if you are arriving a few days early, we can't arrange transfers on those days. We can only arrange transfers on the standard arrival day. But let's talk a little bit about what you can expect if you do have those transfers included. So, of course, you're going to leave your aircraft. You're going to be going then through passport control. And then you're going to be entering the public arrivals hall. Now, one thing to know is that if you're in the baggage claim area, you still have another step to go before you get into the public arrivals hall. But once you get in there, you should be looking for someone holding a green Go Ahead sign. So look for a green Go Ahead sign. It will be about this size, about this color. So look for a green Go Ahead sign. Another thing that you can do that's very helpful is we're going to be sending you a package in the mail that will have a name tag and luggage tags in it. So if you can wear these, that will make it so it's easier for us to spot you when you're walking through that airport arrivals area. Now, Katya, can I ask you about that arrival day? Is there anything that you want to add that I may have forgotten to mention about the arrival in Milan?
No, it's actually, I just want to add that the transportation that will be taken care if you pay for the transfer, for the included transfer, might take about 1.5 hours from the airport to the hotel. That is what normally takes, the distance. Sometimes you might be waiting for other people from different flights that will be on the same transfer as yours. So it doesn't mean that you come out of the baggage area, you will be put on a car and to hotel. Sometimes there is a little wait for other passengers that might be on the same flight as yours that you don't know yet, but will be on the same tour. And so it might take a little longer for them to get their luggage or whatever. So you will be greeted by your tour director or by a go-ahead staff that will show you where to wait for the next members of our group before you go to hotel. And of course, depending on the time of your arrival, you might not be allowed to check in immediately at the hotel because normally check-in is at 2 p.m. So if you arrive very early in that morning, you can enjoy a cappuccino, you can enjoy a nice breakfast before being allowed to your room. But just for you to be prepared for that, that's how it happens. And then you will start exploring beautiful Italy. You start from the north, you will go to Como Lake, then you will go across the peninsula to Venice, and then you will be going south, passing through Ferrara, Florence, Assisi, all the way down to the Sorrento Peninsula. You have a chance of visiting the Capri Island, and the tour will end in Rome. So you're going to do the highlights and not just the highlights, because in every place we're going, of course, there will be the some extra excursions that you can take that will help you go deeper into the territory.
Wonderful. So I would actually love to go into some of those excursions. Now, these are excursions that you can add to enhance your experience. Now, Katia, I had one question that we get a lot, which is if people do decide to do these excursions, this doesn't mean that they would be missing any other part of the tour, correct?
No, the optional excursions are all designed and planned to not, overlap with the other excursions. So it's all made that you can take them all and still have free time to do your own thing during, in between the optional and included excursions. So you will have time for shopping. You will have time for just sitting down, enjoying nice meals and nice time with in the city centers. So it's a way to offer more experiences, more sites, and being assisted while doing such excursions, and then have your own adventurous experiences on your own out of the included and optional excursions.
And for these excursions, is it typically the tour director that goes along with them? Do we have an extra guide, or is it both for some of them? Can you talk a little bit about who's leading these?
The tour director is traveling with the tour at every activity, including and optional excursions. So what changes is the local guides, because we have a local expert in each city. So that is the difference between a tour director and the local guides. So the local guides will be different in Venice, in Rome, in Florence. Actually, in Rome, you're going to have 3-4 different experts. One expert on the Colosseum, one on the Vatican, one on the catacombs, and so on. So each person specialized on a specific tour. The tour director is the one that will assist you and coordinate all of the activities from beginning till end of the tour every single day.
Great. All right, so let's hop right in, and I'm going to ask you to go through these sequentially from the beginning of the tour to the end. So the first excursion that we have available is on Lake Como, and this is a cruise on Lake Como. We call this Lake Como Cruise and Villaggio. Can you tell us a little bit about this, Fred?
This is such a romantic excursion because you're going to see the lake from the lake itself. So the tour, of course, offers you the view of the lake from the city, from the many villas, but being on a boat gives you a completely different presentation of the mansion, the beautiful mansions that are facing the lake. And then, of course, you have the meal included and the visit of wonderful Bellagio. Bellagio is such a little gem facing the Como Lake with this colorful, elegant residences, little alleys. So it's a half-day excursion that makes the experience on the Lake Como a real complete one by adding it more to what you will be seeing in the included half-day morning tour.
Great. Now, moving east to Venice, what an iconic experience to take part in Venice. Can you tell us about this? And also, can you tell us about the difference between the private cruise and then the general cruise that people can do?
Yeah, first of all, yes, you said it's an iconic means of transportation. The gondola rides are only here, and it's so exotic for us Italians as well. So you can't go to Venice without doing a gondola ride. The difference between the private and the group experience is that the gondolas are up to 5 people. So if you pay for your own gondola, you're going to be in a couple, so you and your significant one on one gondola with musicians playing music for you on that gondola. And of course, the gondolier would ride you along the Grand Canal, but also the smaller canals. That's how you are getting a full presentation, because it's not just the big, busy Grand Canal, but you will also be taken away from the crowds and the noisy ones into this more hidden little canals. It's a very, so special and unique experience.
Wonderful. Now, moving along in our itinerary to Florence, we have this excursion that I love that we're able to offer this, the Accademia Gallery, which is the home of Michelangelo's David. So tell us about this visit, please.
David, the perfection, okay? Michelangelo worked for almost 90, he had a very long life, almost 90 years old. And he did this at in a young age. So it's the beginning of his beautiful career. In Florence, there are replicas of David in the main squares, but the original is in the Accademia Gallery. It's a small museum that you can go just for staring at David because of its perfection, its beauty, and so on. But you can also, and the guide on this tour will explain you also of the other works by Michelangelo and many other great artists that are in the same museum. And so it's one of those things that you want to skip because it's probably among the most famous statues in the world.
Wonderful. Now, around the same time of the tour, we also have another excursion. This one, I call it's quintessentially Tuscan, getting out to these Tuscan hill towns of Siena and San Gimignano. I love hearing about this excursion. So please tell us a bit more.
Well, this is like thinking of Tuscany in your, what you've seen in movies, in pictures, in paintings. So the rolling hills, the olive groves, it's vineyards everywhere. This is what it's all about. It's a full day because it includes Siena, which was a rival city of Florence, in the very heart of the countryside. It's a large city, but it's so rich with history, but also young because of the young population of students that live there. And then you will be taken to San Gimignano, which is opposite in terms of being small, but a quaint village, famous for its towers, still in the countryside. And as I said, sometimes it looks so beautiful that it looks fake because it's like painted in the landscape. And the tour also includes a wine tasting. So as I said, as you said, the quintessential of Tuscany. So art, history, medieval villages, and of course, the experience in Tuscany also involves food and wine. And this is what you get as a full day experience.
Now, moving ahead in the itinerary, during our time that we are staying in Assisi, we have the option to visit Perugia. There's some city highlights, and there's also wine tasting on this tour, but this city has a really fascinating history.
Yeah, this is one of the sites that most people come not prepared for, because obviously Florence, Venice, you don't need to say much. There is the reputation, the famous, beautiful, picturesque pictures that you've seen. Perugia is less famous and elegant at the same time. It's been home for many great early Renaissance artists. So if we have Michelangelo, it's also because of the ones that started in Perugia. And it's a place where you can see in a small town, in a half-day excursion, how the Italians' daily life works. Because sometimes people think, oh, okay, it looks more like a museum. No, it's alive. Every old building is inhabited with the restaurants and the cafes at the lower level. And to add something that's, I think it's very interesting for Perugia, is also the capital of the chocolate making. So we're famous for chocolate in Italy as well. And this is where what Perugia is famous for. So also the different wines, because when we talk of wines, obviously every region has its own grapes and wines. So going to a different wine tasting is a completely different experience because of the people that present it, because of what you're tasting. And in this case, in fact, it opens up to a completely different world. And as I said, most times people go and they like the simplicity and the unique aspect of Perugia because it's unexpected, I would say.
Lovely. All right, so from here, we're going to be continuing to move south to the Sorrento Peninsula. And when we are there, we have this excursion. Now, Katia, I understand that you were actually just here in Capri. First of all, I'm jealous, but tell us a little bit about what we can expect if we do Capri, a day on the iconic island.
Yeah, I was there yesterday on a tour. And well, first thing I can tell you that there is a change of color because we leave the green hills for the blue Mediterranean. And the blue is the main thing, the intense color of the beautiful water. The tour is, it's taking you to, there is a mini cruise, so you will be taken on a motorboat to different grottos, the coral grotto, the white grotto, the green grotto, and then you're going to see the symbols, the Faraglioni rocks from the water. And then you go up on the village. La Piazzetta is a famous meeting place where all the celebrities usually are pictured, you know, where the paparazzi comes to spot them sitting in the shade, trying to hide behind their big hats, but everybody knows they're there. But anyway, it's a very pleasant day. Sometimes can be crowded, but the crowd is because everybody wants to see it. You don't want to miss it. So it's one of the most beautiful islands. It's a small island. You will be taken there by ferry. So we go by ferry, then we have a cruise, and then we have a walking tour to the gardens also, Augustus Gardens, and free time to eventually, buy souvenirs from. More sandals, by the way. Capri is famous for the sandals. The style of the island of Capri is famous among the celebrities. And you will see pictures of celebrities everywhere.
Lovely. All right. So now from the Sorrento Peninsula, we're turning back north and heading to Rome, which will be the last city of the tour. Now we do have one excursion that we is available here before the tour concludes, and that is the Vatican City. Katya, in my mind, this is sort of essential. This is something you have to do if you haven't done it yet. Tell us a little bit about the visit to Vatican City, please.
Well, first of all, it's its own country. So you're going to do two countries in one day. So you will be taken to the smallest independent state in the world with one of the richest collection of art, today open to the public. But until 100 years ago, it was the residence of the Pope, once the King of Rome. And you will see beautiful, spectacular ceilings, tapestries, collections of Greek and Roman art, all in one place. And the Sistine Chapel, we mentioned Michelangelo. Michelangelo started his career in Florence, where he was from, but he spent most of his life in Rome because the Pope was so rich and wealthy. He was only ensuring to himself the greatest artist. And of course, Michelangelo was the genius of the age and worked especially for him. So you're going to see the Sistine Chapel. You're going to see La Pietà, which is the famous Virgin Mary holding the body of Jesus. It's going to be in the largest church in the world, which is St. Peter's Basilica. So it's a half-day excursion, but so intense. Obviously, the Vatican City-State is the smallest state in the world, one of the richest collection of art in the world. So even if you've been there before, or if it's your first time, you can't see it all, but it's made to show you the best. And wherever you turn, every gallery opens to beauty, really. And it's the headquarters of the Christianity. So you can visit for multiple reasons.
Great. Now, Katya, so this is the last excursion that we have during the main tour, but we do have the extension. Now, this is for folks who have decided to extend their time in Rome. So we have a couple of excursions available here. Now, I can't think of anything much more Italian than doing a pasta making class. Tell us about the pasta making class and dinner.
Yeah, of course, you will be eating so much pasta, lasagna, ravioli, that at the end you need to be able to make it so that when you go home, you can continue eating good pasta. And in a couple of hours, you will be making two different kinds of pasta. It changes every time. It might be cavatelli, it might be ravioli, it might be fettuccine. But yes, it's fun, and it's also a way to learn something that you bring home with you. So because you will be looking at the, imagine you go home, you look at the pictures while enjoying some good Italian wine that you might bring from here after the wine tastings, and then you will also be cooking some delicious pasta that you make. And it's not just making things, it's of course making things with other people that by the end of the tour you will get to know. So you're going to share this experience with the rest of the group, and it's going to be fun at the same time.
Great. Now, we also have an excursion called the Walking Tour of Rome's Iconic Sites. Now, the included tour that we have in Rome is the Colosseum and the Roman Forum, and this is a slightly different part of town, right? Can you tell us a little bit about what's included on this tour?
Well, first of all, the Trevi Fountain, because, in Rome, we say for Rome, one lifetime is not enough. So we want you to come back, and to ensure a return trip to Rome, you have to toss a coin in the fountain. You have to toss a coin that will make sure you will return. Believe me, it works. It worked for me, and it's working for everybody. So the tour is a walking tour. It's a couple of hours, a walking tour from the Spanish Steps to the Trevi Fountain, the Pantheon, the best preserved ancient Roman temple, which is a church today, and the famous Four Rivers Fountain, which is by Bernini. So this is a sort of it's a stroll along the city that will keep the landmarks of the center of Rome. So you will have the included archaeological areas. Then you can opt to do the Christian part of the city. You can do the walking tour and the fountains, and you will be mentioning Bernini. And then next day, you're going to complete it with the underground part, right, Nielsen? That's the other and last optional that you can take. This one will take you to the underground cemeteries dating 2nd, 3rd, 4th century, and to the beautiful Basilica of St. Paul. So you will go back to the age of the early Christians, before Christianity was legalized, and you can see the work behind digging those underground tunnels, and then the churches that were built immediately after the legalization of Christianity, places like St. Paul that are centuries old, but they're still used daily for daily services. It's massive monuments that the Romans enjoy daily. So to complete your experience.
Great. All right. Oh, I just saw one question come in from Amanda. Amanda was wondering if Amanda goes on this excursion, can she skip the catacombs part if she doesn't want to go underground?
You can still do that because the tour is divided into 2 parts. So the Basilica of St. Paul, which I told you is impressive in its beauty, and then the catacombs, the other half. But even if you don't like being underground, part of the catacombs tour, part of the presentation will be provided in a large church. It's an underground church, but it's not dark because there are windows on the higher part. So it's fully illuminated, so you don't feel uncomfortable in that part. You can skip, again, if you don't feel comfortable, the passages where the loculis, the burials are, but still the tour as a whole is definitely worth it to take it.
Great. All right. Well, Katja, thank you so much for giving us that overview of the tour and the excursions. We are just about to get into our question and answer period. So I see we have a lot of questions submitted already, so we have a lot to get through. But before we do that, I just want to remind you again, please download the Go Ahead Tours app. One thing that's very important to us here is how your tour went. We want you to fill out an evaluation. Trust me, for our folks here in the North American offices, this information is so valuable to us. But one other thing that I want to encourage you to do is, if you only rate one aspect of this tour, please make sure you're telling us about the people that you interact with, your tour director, your local guides. They really want to make sure that they're giving you the best possible experience. So please tell us about your tour director. All right, so I see that we have a number of questions submitted. So Katja, are you ready to take some of these on?
Ready.
So the first question is, does the Colosseum tour include the underground tour?
No, it doesn't. For multiple reasons. First of all, because it's making the timings very difficult. Second, they only allow a very small number of people at the same time, and our groups tend to be larger than that. But definitely what is now visible of the underground part is visible from the ground level as well, because you will be looking at the underground part, which is exposed basically. It's not covered from the area that we visit. So you will be looking at the underground from above, basically. Because what is missing in the Colosseum, well, there is a lot of parts that are missing from the original structures, but there is no stage. So basically the underground is visible because there is no ceiling. So you don't need to go deeper in the ground to understand those incredible passages, how they worked in the ancient age. And you will explain about it by your guides in depth.
Great. The next question is, if we bring a laptop, is it safe to leave in the room? when I travel, I usually do bring my laptop with me, but just as a safety precaution, I do lock it up in the safe when I'm not there. Katya, is it typical that the rooms will have safes in them?
The rooms have safes. In fact, the tour directors will remind you to take advantage of the safes for your valuables, in case for your passports, because you don't have to carry your passport with you along the daily excursion. So it's good to have a photocopy of it. You can have a picture on your phone. It's good to have a ID, a picture ID with you, but everything else you can take advantage of the safe, including the laptop. But I travel with my laptop, and it's yes, it's safe to leave it in the room anyway.
Great. The next question is from Sandra, and this is about tipping in restaurants. What tipping is expected in restaurants?
We do tip, and normally it's between 10 and 15%. And about tipping, it's always paid cash. Once you get the bill, you will calculate it on what is included on what is on your bill, and then you put it on the table so that the waiters will get it after you leave. But it doesn't, in fact, that's something that you're not used to, but because you can also at home, I know, pay your the tips through credit cards. It's something that we don't do. So that's another reason why you need that pocket money, let's say cash, to leave on the table. So 10, 15%. We always tip. The only thing that we don't tip usually is taxis. If during your free time you get on a cab to go to somewhere that you booked, we pay what is shown on the taximeter. That always starts with a minimum amount, which is including also the tipping. So what we only round up, maybe if it is just a few cents, you don't get coins back, but I mean, small coins, obviously. But in general, that's the only thing we don't tip. Restaurants, we do tip for the good service for the that we receive.
Great. All right. I see that we're getting close to the end of our hour here, but we do have a lot of really good questions. So, Katya, if we go a little bit over the hour, are you able to stick around for a few minutes to help us answer some of these questions?
I'm at your disposal, Nielsen. We did it before.
Great.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to allow another minute or so for any last questions, but we have plenty to work through here. My next question for you is about the arrival day. So how long will it take to get from the airport in Milan to the Lake Como region?
Let's say 1.5 hours, depending on traffic. Of course, after, maybe you should consider from the moment you land, you get the luggage, and you get out from the luggage area, it will be already probably 45 minutes. And then let's say that you might need a little more for the other people who were on the same flight to make the group together. So, but driving from the airport to hotel is about 1.5 hours. Okay.
Great. All right. So let's see. The next question here is about the optional excursion on Capri. The question is, do we need to wear a bathing suit for that excursion?
Well, we don't suggest to go swimming there, simply because you will be on a public ferry from the mainland to the island. The beach on Capri is limited, it's very small, so you might not even have a chance for changing. So you might be sitting back on the ferry with your wet clothes and suits. So I usually don't suggest to do it.
All right. So the next question is from Chantal, and Chantal is asking about on a typical day, what time do tour activities start?
Let's say between 8 and 8:30 in general. So we always have a breakfast before starting, and usually the breakfast starts at around 7. So you will have enough time to have good coffee and a good breakfast before starting. Depending, of course, there might be earlier starts, probably when you're transferring, for example, from Assisi to Pompeii. It's a long day, and that might be maybe 15 minutes earlier than that. But that's, let's say, around 8 o'clock, between 8 and 8:30.
Wonderful. All right, so I'm going to keep moving forward and looking at to our questions here. This one's from an anonymous attendee, but the question is it likely that there will be irons in the room, like for ironing clothing?
No, that is absolutely no, because for safety reasons, it's forbidden. So they don't want to put their guests in a dangerous situation. So they usually, some hotels might have a ironing room that you can access, or there might be a chance of getting their iron, but for a limited time. They want you to return it the moment you're done with it, but they don't have the irons in the rooms. Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay. Oh, this is an interesting one. So this is about the gondola excursion. So these folks, they're traveling as a group of 6 people. So there's 3 couples, there's 6 people. They're wondering if all of them would be able to fit in a gondola, because you mentioned that the gondolas have 5 seats.
5 is the number. Unfortunately, that's also the reason. It's just like being in a car or a motorbike. I know that you think of the gondola being a more romantic means of transportation, but it's the equivalent of our expensive cars. And they have rules, so they can't accept more than 5 people. So if you're 6, you might be in, split with, or maybe 4, and 2 will be with another couple in a different gondola if you're doing the group gondola.
That makes sense. All right. Oh, so this is a question from Julie, and I sort of brushed over this during our presentation, but can you tell us a little bit about visiting Pompeii?
Oh, sure. We do that the day when we transfer from Assisi to the Sorrento Peninsula. So it is about 5 hours drive, more or less. I mean, including the stops, because we will be doing technical stops along the way, let's say. Once in Pompeii, you will have a guided tour of the excavations. It is about a couple of hours, so you will be hitting the main ruins. So the Forum, you're going to be doing some of the baths, the red light districts of the ancient city, and well, you will be stepping on the original cobblestones. Yes, it's one of the most incredible sites. We didn't mention it because it's included, so that's part of your included itinerary. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, great. So the next question is, this person says, so excited for the tour and all the excursions. I've booked most of them. I do hope to do some shopping. Are there certain cities where I should look for certain types of souvenirs?
Yes, each city, because I mean, in Italy, each area is specialized for different artworks. So obviously, Venice is the glass blowing factories that are the highlights. Leather and jewelry in Florence. If you're doing, well, when you will be in Pompeii, you will learn of the importance of the cameo making, which is an old tradition since the Greek age. And of course, mosaic art in Rome since the age of the emperors. And today, the main decoration in the churches of Rome. So you would be told each time, actually, most of our tours also includes a visit to this workshops. So you will be seeing the artists making things. So you will understand the historical value of the items. And of course, you can purge them and bring them home if you wish.
Great. Katia, my next question, and this is something that you did cover before, but I'm just going to ask you to repeat this. Can you tell us about the dress code for the Vatican, please?
Just like for any church, you need to have your shoulders covered and your legs up to your knees. So depending, well, I know that in the summer, we tend to have, like made-to-day, sleeveless shirts. But if you bring a shawl, something that you can put on your shoulder just for the time of the visit, I always keep something packed, that doesn't need to be ironed in my bag that I put on my shoulder just for the visit. Of course, mini skirts, what we used to call hot pants would not be allowed.
Yes.
New generation that hot pants identifies my age, but it doesn't matter. Short pants are not allowed. Okay, so something that comes closer. So knee-length shorts and something that comes around the shoulders would be fine. Nothing fancy. You don't need to be fancy because most of the places are crowded with people that want to visit those sites, just like you want to. So you don't need to, put anything fancy. You will have chances of wearing your fancy outfits at night, at dinners, but not during the daily excursions.
Wonderful. So the next question is from Diana, and I also saw someone else ask the same question down below. Stephanie also asked this, but the question was for the excursion to Capri. Do we visit the Blue Grotto? I believe we visit other grottos, correct?
We do other grottos. In Capri, there is over 60 grottos. We don't do the Blue Grotto because it would take 3 hours on its own. Because you would go from the motorboat at the entrance of this tiny little hole in the rock that you can only enter by getting on a rowboat when you're in the water. So you go from motorboat to the rowboat, and then you have to wait for the rowboat to come out. It's multiple. Well, we used to do it in the past. Most people realize that even if it's beautiful, but you would only do that for that day. So we do another part of the island, as I said, the coral, the green, the white grottos that are spectacular.
Lovely. A question from Kevin, and this is actually a pretty good question. He says, how crowded are the sites? And then he says, will we be able to get close? So I'm not sure exactly what that part of it means, but I have understood that this summer has been very busy in Italy. Is that right?
Yes, it's been very busy, but that's why it's important to pre-book the tours, because we make sure to enter without wasting time in line. So we have timed entrances to most crowded sites that, yes, are crowded, but at least we will not be standing in line to access the sites. They keep adding, in fact, regulations to limit the number of people accessing the sites. Recently, for example, the Pantheon was one of them. They introduced an entry ticket for the Pantheon, which we are including in our tour. But this is because we want you to get the best of each experience. But we will not be the only ones visiting. So it might be crowded, but at least we plan it in a way that we don't waste time in line.
Great. All right. So, and I see a question here that you've already answered this one, talking about which kinds of objects to get in different cities. So, again, your tour director will be a great resource for this, but things like leather and jewelry, Florence is your spot, glass in Venice, and the list goes on. So I see a question here from Ken, and he says, any idea how many miles or kilometers per day we will be walking? So Ken, this is a little bit of a tricky one to quantify because it can vary a lot depending on which excursions you add, and also if you want to do exploration on your own afterwards. What I would say is if you're one of these people like me that tracks your steps, you are going to be going over your 10,000 steps a day every day of the tour, guarantee it. We say in our guidelines that you should expect to be on your feet for included activities for at least 2 hours every day. I think that's a good way to put it. But again, I would say that you're going to be going over those 10,000 steps every day. So expect a lot of walking. If you have time between now and then, I would say start just trying to get out for longer walks and breaking in your shoes for the tour, because you're going to be wanting to be exploring even more once the once the activities end for the day.
That's in fact the best suggestion. Keep training, because well, the minimum couple of hours is for the guided tours, but from the hotel to where you meet the guide, you might be walking sometimes. There is just a few tours that you will be taken by bus to the entry of the sites, like, for example, the catacombs, St. Paul's Basilica. In general, the buses are allowed to drop off people a little farther from where the tour starts. So yes, 2 hours is the guided walk-in tour, but there might be some extra 20 minutes to go to the meeting place and after. So yes, you will be happy to recharge daily with pasta.
Great. All right. So, Katia, I have one more question here. And this one is for someone who is arriving into Italy a couple of days before the tour starts. They're curious to know if there might be a train or some other kind of transportation to get from the Milan airport to the Lake Como region. What are your thoughts there if someone is arriving a few days before the tour begins?
Well, it depends on where they're staying. Yes, there is trains all going almost everywhere, but the Lake Como is big. So we always use different hotels. It might be Lecco region, might be Lake Como. So check on where the hotel that you will be staying is, and you might go by train and then get on a car once there to get to the hotel. Because it might be, yes, there is a train connecting the main cities, but then once you get there, luckily, there might be longer distances to cover.
Yeah, I would say you should have your hotel information from us about a month before you depart, and then I would check out Google Maps, and I would use, there's a website that I love called Rome, the number 2, Rio. So that's ROME, the number 2, and then RIO.com. It's like Google Maps, but it provides some more information about different transport options and pricing. So that's a resource that I would recommend that you use. All right. So as we close up for today, I just want to remind you that we also have resources on our website and our app. You can go to goaheadtours.com/help or visit us in the app to help get your questions answered. Katia, before we say goodbye, do you have any last thoughts for our travelers?
No, I would. Well, first of all, I'm so happy that you chose to visit Italy for your vacation. So we're very happy to have you here, and be prepared to the many differences that you will find within your home and here. It's a small country with a very old history, centuries of history, and sometimes things are might be perceived as odd, strange. be open to learn the differences. And you will bring home extra suitcases, I'm sure, with things you will bring physically, but also things that you will bring inside, because that's going to enrich you in many different ways.
Yes. Katja, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to work with you. And I also want to thank you at home for joining us today and for Go ahead and choosing Italy. We truly cannot wait to see you on tour. And until we do, we will say safe travels and we will see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Nielsen. Bye. Ciao.
Thank you.